Hey everyone, it's Tim from Secret Fire Books, and I haven't been putting that much up on YouTube recently. I did quite a bit I did a little bit in 2023. I put up a couple of book reviews, an audiobook recording of one of my short stories, and then I didn't do really all that much else. And this year I look to change that. I look to put up a few more book reviews and other such things, maybe some fun videos, maybe some more audiobook recordings, who knows. But mainly I wanted to make some videos to highlight some of the authors that I've been reading lately. There's quite a few authors that I think more people should know about, many of them independent, who people should definitely be paying attention to. And so I wanted to make this quick video to show what I've been reading lately, what I plan to be reading in the next couple months, and what might possibly be made into a book review or other such video for the channel. And so the first one I wanted to talk about is a book that I actually read quite a bit ago, which is Dan the Destructor by Mr. Rob Rhymes. This is the first book in the Barbarians of the Storm series. I have this and two of the other books, and then a short story collection. And it's this really fun, goofy, wacky kind of series that's set in this post-apocalyptic world that's sort of a mishmash of high fantasy meets Mad Max meets horror, cyberpunk, steampunk goodness. It's a lot of fun. And they're really small, short reads. And so, yeah, look forward to reading the other two. And as far as I know, Rob Rhymes is actually putting out a fourth book in the next couple months, I think. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Next, we have Dilvish the Damned by Roger Zelazny. Now, Roger Zelazny is an author who's been on my radar for quite a while. I've known about his Chronicles of Amber series for a while, and I've always wanted to read it. But then I heard about Dilvish the Damned, and the concept of it was what really got me to buy a copy. It's about this ancient folk hero named Dilvish. He's a half-elf, he has magic powers, he has magic equipment, and he leads this great revolt against the forces of evil in his world. And he becomes a hero to the people, he triumphs over evil, saves the day, saves the world, and then afterward he bumps into this wizard who turns him into stone and traps his soul in hell for 200 years. And so after 200 years of being tortured and imprisoned in hell, he finally escapes with this giant metal horse named Black. And Black is indestructible, he's super fast, he's faster than any living horse. He can climb up the sides of mountains, he can breathe fire, he knows magic spells, and so he and Dilvish team up to hunt down the wizard who trapped Dilvish in the first place. And so it was a lot of fun. It's a fix-up novel, so it's a bunch of different short stories about the character. Yeah, I just thought it was just a really awesome, quirky idea for a character, and I thought it'd be a ton of fun, and it is. It was. I enjoyed this book from beginning to end. It was a lot of fun. And there's a sequel, The Changing Land, which I'll have to get a copy of soon. I might need to get one off of eBay because they might be out of print. I'm not sure. They're older books. Next up, I wanted to talk about Citadel of the Seven Swords by Eric Wagg. This is book one of the Skard the Wandering Sword series. Skarda, I think it's pronounced Skarda. I've watched a couple of Eric's YouTube videos. I think that's how it's pronounced. Anyway, it is it's sort of old-fashioned, even says right on the back, an old-fashioned sword and sorcery novel. Very much inspired by Conan the Barbarian, by Robert E. Howard, that kind of thing. And I was looking forward to it quite a bit. And for the most part, I enjoyed this book. I thought there were a lot of pacing issues toward the middle portion that could have been avoided and that could have been streamlined maybe. But for the most part, I really enjoyed this book. And I know that Eric Wagg is putting out book 2, Weird of the Skull Totem, I believe it's called. And that's going to be the end of the month. I actually pre-ordered the ebook version, so I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, Citadel of Seven Swords, you should definitely check it out. And much like Dan the Destructor, the Barbarians of the Storm series, it is a self-published series. So yeah, Eric Wagg publishes all of his own books. So definitely support your indie authors out there. Definitely support Eric. He's doing some good work. Just throw the books on the bed. They're paperbacks. They're virtually indestructible. Next is a book that I was really excited about, and I ended up not finishing it because I just hated it so much. And that's really unfortunate. And I I don't know if I should make a review about this because there's already so many bad reviews of this book on YouTube already. And I don't know if there's much more I could say about it that hasn't been said already. And that is Shadow of the Conqueror by Shad M. Brooks. Now, I am a big fan of Shad M. Brooks. Rather, I'm a big fan of his YouTube channel, Shadiversity. He's been a constant source of entertainment for me for quite a few years now. And I was really looking forward to his book. I remember he posted quite a few videos on his channel about the making of the book, how he crafted the magic system, you know, his thoughts behind character writing and whatnot. And I remember him saying that this was supposed to be a story in which it was a redemption arc for essentially the worst villain imaginable. He wanted to take like a Stalin or a Hitler type character and write a story about them in a fantasy setting where he tried to redeem them and make them the hero. And I thought that's an interesting idea, but in execution, it just doesn't. It doesn't work. The main character of this book is incredibly unlikable. All the other characters are incredibly stupid, and the only reason they are so stupid is so that the plot can kind of be pushed along, and all the pieces can be put where they need to be. And so people are just either really ignorant or they make really stupid decisions just so the plot can be pushed along. And so I didn't like it whatsoever. I finished it about 70-75% of the way through, and yeah, it was just a downright disappointment. So we'll see if I make a review on that. But sorry, Shad, didn't like your book. Next up is The Last Kingdom by Bernard Cornwell. This is a historical fiction novel, not fantasy of any kind. There's no fantastical elements at all. It's just historical fiction. It is one of a 13-book series that was the inspiration for The Last Kingdom, which is a BBC television series that got moved onto Netflix. It had, 5 seasons and then a movie that kept it all off. And it's one of my favorite TV series of all time. I absolutely adore that show. And so I thought it was about time that I get start reading these books. And I just fell in love with this novel. It is absolutely amazing. It's a coming-of-age story. There's lots of action. There's lots of blood. And it's about a boy growing up amongst Vikings. It takes place during the Viking invasions of England during the 10th century. And it's about this boy's life growing up amongst the Vikings who murdered his family. And he's essentially raised by them. They treat him better than his family ever did. And he has to decide, you know, which world he belongs to. Does he belong to the Saxons or does he belong to the Danes? Does he belong to England or is he a Viking? And it's just a great historical coming-of-age story. Highly recommend. And I look forward to reading the other 12 books in the series, but it'll be a while before I get to them. Next up is something special, and that is Imaro by Charles Saunders. Now, Imaro is another fix-up novel. Charles Saunders wrote the original stories in the 1960s. He was very much inspired by Conan, but he wanted to do something a little different. He wanted to make a mythos and a character that was rooted in African folklore and African mythology, and it ended up being something really, really special, I think. The stories are every bit as, you know, epic and brutal and mysterious as the Conan stories, but they're set in like this mythical version of Africa, and it's really cool. And unfortunately, a lot of the books are out of print now. I believe there's 4 books in the main series, and then there's a short story collection, and unfortunately most of them are out of print, which is a real shame. And I plan on doing a review about these eventually. Now let's move on to things that I'm currently reading, and the first one is Jirel of Joiry by C.L. Moore. Jirel of Joiry is a collection of short stories written by C.L. Moore during the 1930s. C.L. Moore was an author who wrote stories for Weird Tales and other pulp fiction magazines of the 1930s, a lot of which were the same ones that Robert E. Howard and H.P. Lovecraft and all those guys were showing up in around the time. And so her stories are very much inspired by Conan and all the other classic pulp fantasy writers. But she gives it her own twist because her character, Jirel, is often cited as the first proper sword and sorcery heroine, the first sword and sorcery female lead, if you will. And her stories are really interesting. I've read 2 of them so far, still have 3 more to go. And they're very cool. They're very dark and creepy. They have this real haunting, fantastical atmosphere about them. And C.L. Moore just has a real way with words where she just describes so much emotion, usually dread. She's really good at invoking dread in her stories. And so I'm very looking forward to finishing the rest of those. A lot of fun. And I'm also currently reading Conan the Barbarian, the first epic collection of the Marvel Comics run of Conan the Barbarian. And if I can find the specific splash page, I just need to show you how cool some of this art really is. So as you can see, just some absolutely gorgeous 1970s classic comic book art. Done by the very talented Barry Windsor Smith, who got a lot of work done for Marvel in the 70s. And yeah, those comics are just a ton of fun. A lot of people actually apparently don't like how Conan is drawn in the original Marvel run. They think he looks a little too lanky, a little too young, a little too boyishly handsome. But you know what? I think he looks fine. I think it works for the style of the comic book is going for, and it's a lot of original stuff, but it adapts some of Robert E. Howard's old short stories into comic book form. So it's been a lot of fun reading those. All right, moving on to things that I will be reading. My TBR, if you want to call it that. I don't really have a TBR. I don't really have a strict list of things that I plan on reading. But the next thing I plan on reading, and speaking of Conan, is the novelization of the Conan the Barbarian movie, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. This was written by L. Sprague de Camp and Lynn Carter, who are two of the more popular Conan pastiche writers. They wrote a bunch of pastiche novels and spin-offs back when Howard's original stories were being reprinted. And so, yeah, it should be a nice, fun, quick read, and I'm looking forward to that. And then I'm going to follow that up with the next two Barbarians of the Storm books. Book 2, Atomic Beasts and Where to Kill Them. And Book 3, Swords Against Bastards. Love that title. Next up is, I'm going to be continuing a series that I've been reading for a while, and then I kind of took a break from because I really burnt myself out on it. And that is, I believe this is book, oh man, this is number 13, I think. It's either 13 or 14 in the Dresden Files series, and that is Cold Days by Jim Butcher. I'm a big Dresden Files fan. I love these books. I got into them sometime in 2022, and I bought a ton of them, I read a ton of them, and I burnt myself out. And so I made it about a third of the way through this one, I think. And then I just said, no, I can't. I got to take a break. I'm just burning myself out on this. I got to read some other stuff. So yeah, I plan on picking up Cold Days again soon. I have the next book, Skin Game. It's over there on my bookshelf. So I'll be reading that once I'm finished. And hopefully I'll get caught up soon, because there's only 2 other books after that, I believe. That'll be interesting. So next up is something a little different. I've been checking out a lot of magazines lately, a lot of independent and web-based magazines, specifically ones that publish sword and sorcery and heroic fantasy stories, more old-fashioned pulpy fantasy kind of stuff. And there's a lot of them that I found. There's a lot of different magazines, but the one that really caught my eye and I thought was really interesting was Old Moon Quarterly. Old Moon Quarterly publishes, like I said, sword and sorcery and heroic fantasy stories, but specifically with like a weird fiction edge, like a sort of Lovecraftian horror edge to it. And I love me some horror themed fantasy. And so yeah, I got volumes 4 and 5 of Old Moon Quarterly. And I plan on collecting the rest of the issues eventually. But I'll be reading those shortly. I've actually read 1 or 2 stories out of, I think, volume 4. I can't remember which one I read. But look forward to reading the rest of them. They're really cool, really creepy. So I'm not the biggest fan of modern fantasy, or at least the direction that modern fantasy is going. I don't like hard magic systems. I don't like huge world-spanning conflicts. I don't like the idea of, let's get multiple different points of views from multiple different characters across multiple different continents. I'm not that kind of reader. That's not the kind of stories I enjoy. I'd much rather fantasy be, short and sweet and punchy. But unfortunately, that's not what's really popular nowadays. But every once in a while, I'll find a series that catches my eye, and something that, it's not entirely all that new. It's been out for a while now, but it's something that a lot of people, especially folks on YouTube, have been singing the praises of for a long time, and that is the First Law series by Joe Abercrombie. And I read the first book, The Blade itself, a while ago, and then I gave it a break because it's a big old book, it's a big old story, and so I thought I'd take a break, and I thought it was okay, but I wasn't in a huge hurry to finish it. But now I thought it was about time I picked up the second book before they are hanged, and so I think it's about time I get back into that because, like I said, I didn't think the first book was amazing or anything. It was fun. It was a fun read. It wasn't nearly as good as everybody says it is. But who knows? Maybe they just love that book so much because the second and third are just so amazing. I will find out. And then shifting gears to something that was a classic a long time ago, but has been really receiving a lot of vitriol from people nowadays, is a book that I've wanted to get around to for a long time. It's been on my radar for a long time, and I tried reading it at one point, but I didn't make it that far. Not because I didn't like it, just because some other stuff came up and I didn't get around to finishing it. And that is The Sword of Shannara, or Sword of Shannara, however that's pronounced, by Terry Brooks. The sentiment that I hear from a lot of folks when they bring up the Shannara series is that it's just a Lord of the Rings ripoff, and that it's not too original. It just kind of takes elements from Lord of the Rings, mashes them up, and kind of regurgitates them. But, I'm well aware that this series was immensely popular in its time. And that was a time when Lord of the Rings was popular and when demand for more books like Lord of the Rings was going around. But I thought it was about time that I pick up a copy for myself and figure out just what it's about and just how good it really is. So we'll see. And I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. You can't see it over there, but there's a big old bookshelf by my headboard that's just full of Tolkien books. So I'm a huge Tolkien fan, and as long as it's not a direct Tolkien ripoff, as long as it's not like stealing characters and plot details and stuff, I'm fine. As long as it's as long as it's a fairly original story, I'm fine if it's Tolkien inspired. But yeah, looking forward to reading that. Then last, but certainly not least, is a book that I should have read a long, long time ago. I'm a big fan of King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table. I loved watching The Sword and the Stone as a kid. I love Monty Python and the Holy Grail. But I've never actually read any of the original myths and legends about King Arthur. I've tried multiple times to read The Once and Future King by T.H. White, but every time I pick that book up, it never works for me. Something about the weird, whimsical, satirical style of that book never worked for me. And so I thought I'd go and pick up something a little more classic, but a little more serious. And so I used some of my Christmas money to purchase this very nice, shiny hardcover with these nice golden sprayed edges. This nice cover of Le Morte d'Arthur by Sir Thomas Malory. And if you don't know what that is, it's essentially just this huge collection of stories from the Arthurian mythos that Thomas Malory compiled back in the 15th century. It's an old, old book. It's been translated into multiple different languages, and so this is just a modern English translation of it. And so I'm really looking forward to reading that. It's separated into different sections that chronicle Arthur's life and his adventures. And so I'm probably gonna use this as sort of like a buffer between each of the big books that I read this year. So I'm probably gonna read a novel or two and then read a couple stories from Le Morte d'Arthur. And I'm really looking forward to it. Should be a lot of fun. So yeah, that's everything that I've been reading so far, and everything I plan on reading in the next couple of months. I definitely plan on making quite a few book reviews for the channel, and if you are interested in checking those out, make sure to subscribe so you can stay tuned for those videos when they finally drop. And also, if you're interested in any of my books, you can find them at my website, secretfirebooks.com, as well as on Amazon. And so until next time, keep reading.